Hello all viewers. Welcome back to all aspirants tuning into this channel. Dosto, I hope you're doing great and your preparation journey is going strong. Today, we are moving ahead to chapter 3 of our series, the Tsarist and Soviet Operational Art 1853 to 1991. Dosto, as you know, our team's endeavor is to make your journey smoother and more effective. That's why, for all serious aspirants, and by popular demand, we've prepared a question bank from the prescribed books for military history. But wait, there's more. Along with that, we also have a current affairs series, super important for staying updated. If you haven't enrolled yet, Dosto, don't miss out. Enroll yourself today and get PDF copies for both subjects. These resources will help you stay ahead. Dosto, I've seen many aspirants scoring less marks in these subjects, but you don't have to be one of them. Get your copy of the PDFs and strengthen your preparation. And for those who have already got the PDFs, make sure to watch these videos. It'll help you understand the concepts better. Now, Dosto, just a quick recap. There are 7 chapters in operational art. Napoleon and the dawn of operational warfare. Prussian, German operational art. The Tsarist and Soviet Operational Art 1853 to 1991. Operational Art and Britain 1909 to 2009. American Operational Art 1917 to 2008. The Rise and Fall of Israeli Operational Art. The Chinese Way of War. And finally, conclusion. Today, we are focusing on Chapter 3. The Tsarist and Soviet Operational Art 1853 to 1991. If you haven't watched the previous 2 videos yet, Dosto, I highly recommend you watch them sequentially. That way, you'll get a proper flow and better understanding. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into question 1 of this chapter. Question 1 states, how did military defeat contribute to the development of operational art in Russia between 1853 and 1917? Your answer should reference the Crimean War and Russo-Japanese War, reforms under Aleksandr II and Nicholas II, the military and political consequences of each defeat. Dosto, now let's answer this topic part by part. Just pay close attention, and a sincere request, please don't skip the video. Every part is connected and important for your understanding. Part 1. The Crimean War 1853 to 1856. This was a major defeat for Russia. It exposed Russia's outdated military system and weak industrial base. The loss highlighted that modernization was necessary. Reforms under Alexander II. He modernized the economy to support warfare, established a mass conscript army, and created military districts, strengthened the general staff for better planning and coordination. Military and political consequences. This defeat sparked both social and military reforms. It linked war with social crisis and change in Russia. Laid the foundation for future ideas in operational planning. Part 2. The Russo-Japanese War 1904 to 1905. Yet another major defeat for Russia, this time losing to naval fleets. It exposed serious flaws in command and control. Reforms under Nicholas II. Due to public pressure, he created the Duma, a limited parliament. Military veterans demanded reforms to face modern warfare. The military began studying operations and doctrines more seriously. They developed the idea of fronts to manage multiple armies effectively. Military and political consequences. This war triggered the 1905 revolution and widespread unrest. It forced the Tsar to offer limited political freedoms. Most importantly, it encouraged new military thinking, which led to the development of operational art. Part 3. Overall Impact 1853 to 1917. These repeated defeats pushed Russia toward continuous military reforms and new ideas. Key officers and military thinkers, like Svechin, started working on linking tactics, what happens on the battlefield, with strategy, political and overall goals. And this connection was made through operational art which acts as a bridge between tactics and strategy. These developments laid the foundation of what we now call Russian operational art. Dosto, I hope you've understood this answer well. If yes, then please like, share, and comment. It really motivates us to keep bringing you quality content for your preparation journey. Now let us move to question number 2, which states, explain Aleksandr Svechin's definition of operational art. Your answer should consider the relationship between tactics, operational art, and strategy, the role of political and economic context in warfare, his ideas on the integral military command. Alright dosto, moving on to question 2. Let's break it down part by part, so pay close attention and remember not to skip. Each piece connects to give you the full picture of Svechin's contributions to operational art. Part 1. Aleksandr Svechin's definition of operational art. Svechin clearly defined the relationship between tactics, operational art, and strategy. Tactics solve immediate problems on the battlefield, the here and now. Strategy sets long-term goals. These are defined by political leaders. Now, dosto, comes the key concept, operational art. This is the bridge between tactics and strategy. It's about turning tactical successes into steps that achieve strategic objectives. It plans and conducts campaigns involving multiple battles and armies. So, operational art ensures that winning battles contributes to winning the war. Part 2. Role of political and economic context. Svechin's core belief was that war is never isolated. It's always shaped by political objectives and economic capacity. For him, operational art must account for the type of war. Is it long or short? Total war or limited war? National resources? What's the economic strength and social cohesion of the country? Key warning from Svechin. No military plan can succeed without strong political and economic preparation. He proposed two strategic approaches. Strategy of destruction, aimed at a rapid, decisive victory. Strategy of attrition, focused on long-term weakening of the enemy. This approach depends heavily on political and economic endurance. So, dosto, understanding the context of the war is crucial for operational planning. Part 3. Integral Military Command. Svechin introduced the idea of integral military command. What does this mean? It's about merging political, military, and economic leadership during wartime. Purpose of this concept: to align military operations with national policy and resources. It ensures that the general staff understands the broader constraints and goals. Outcome: this promotes realistic, integrated operational planning. Plans that respect both the military situation and the political economic reality. So, dosto, this was Aleksandr Svechin's vision of operational art, a balanced, integrated approach that connects tactics, strategy, and national capacity. I hope this clears up the concept for you. Now, let's move to question 3, which states, compare and contrast Svechin's dual strategic paradigm with earlier strategic thinking. In your answer, refer to the concepts of attrition, is more, and destruction, sokrisheny. Hans Delbrück's influence. Svechin's critique of Clausewitzian and Napoleonic legacies. Alright dosto, let's answer question 3. In this one, we'll compare Svechin's dual strategic paradigm with earlier strategic thinking. As always, stick with me part by part, don't skip. Every piece builds on the last. Part 1. Svechin's dual strategic paradigm. Svechin proposed two main types of strategy. Attrition is more, focuses on slow, long-term weakening of the enemy. It's not just military, it involves economic planning, political flexibility, and total mobilization. The goal? To drain the enemy's resources and morale over time. Destruction, sokrisheny, seeks a quick, decisive military blow to defeat the enemy's main forces. This is all about rapid victory through offensive operations. So, Svechin's framework gave flexibility, choosing between attrition or destruction based on the situation. Part 2. Husdelbruck's influence. Dosto, Svechin didn't come up with this idea all by himself. He actually borrowed the concept from Husdelbruck, a German historian. Delbruck had similar strategic categories. Ermattung strategy, attrition. Niederwerpung strategy, destruction. Svechin adapted these ideas to Russian military thought as Izmo, attrition. Sokrisheny, destruction. Both Delbruck and Svechin believed that choosing a strategy depends on the state's political goals, its economic and military strength, and the nature of the conflict. So, dosto, strategy isn't one size fits all. It depends on context. Part 3. Critique of Clausewitzian and Napoleonic legacies. Svechin was critical of how Clausewitz's ideas and Napoleon's methods were often misused. His main points: many generals focused blindly on destruction strategies, thinking that quick victories were always possible. Svechin warned that modern industrial warfare made quick victories less likely. He argued that Napoleon's model of short, decisive wars didn't fit the 20th century realities. Wars had become longer, involving economies, societies, and political systems. Therefore, Svechin said modern wars needed flexible strategies, often based on attrition, not just battlefield wins. So, dosto, this was Svechin's dual strategy approach, a more realistic, context-based way to plan wars. It gives us a clear alternative to just blindly following Napoleonic warfare. I hope this clears up the concept for you. As always, if you're liking this video, please like, share, and comment. Let us know your thoughts. Let's move to question 4, which states, to what extent was the Soviet approach to operational art shaped by the experience of the Eastern Front during World War I and the Russian Civil War? Include discussion of Brusilov's offensive and its operational innovations. The lessons Svechin drew from the Polish-Soviet War. Differences in perspective between Svechin and younger Red commanders. Alright dosto, now we'll look at key influences on Soviet operational art, especially Svechin's thinking. Part 1. Influence of the Eastern Front in World War I. Let's talk about the Brusilov Offensive, 1916. This was one of Russia's most successful campaigns in World War I. It introduced key operational innovations. Broad front attacks, attacking across a wide area. Thorough preparation of assault troops. Short, focused artillery bombardments, no long, drawn-out shelling. Small unit infiltration into enemy lines, troops would slip in and disrupt from within. Dosto, these tactics became a model for Soviet operational art later on. The focus was on breaking through enemy lines, exploiting success, pushing forward once the breakthrough happened. Detailed planning and coordination across large fronts. So, the Brusilov offensive showed how preparation and coordination could lead to big successes, an important lesson for Soviet strategy. Part 2. Lessons from the Polish-Soviet War, 1919 to 1921. After World War I, the Polish-Soviet War was another crucial learning point. Svechin's observations. The Red Army overextended itself. They pushed too far during the offensive. There was poor command and control, which led to failure. And ideological overconfidence. They thought revolutionary spirit alone would win wars. Svechin stressed the need for realistic goals, not just ideological dreams. Careful coordination of operations. Always understand the limits of logistics and force capabilities. This reinforced Svechin's core belief that strategy must align with political and economic realities. Part 3. Differences between Svechin and younger Red commanders. Now, dosto, let's see how Svechin differed from the younger Red commanders, like Tukhachevsky and Tryandafilov. Svechin's perspective. He emphasized flexible strategy based on political, economic, and military conditions. He was willing to support a strategy of attrition if the situation demanded it. He was cautious about revolutionary warfare and preventive wars, and he promoted integral military command, bringing political, military, and economic leadership together. Younger Red commanders. They were more aggressive and ideologically driven. They favored preventive wars and large-scale offensives. They believed class struggle would dominate future wars, politics over logistics, and they often underestimated strategic limits and logistical challenges. So, dosto, Svechin stood for caution and balance, while the younger commanders leaned toward boldness and ideology. And that wraps up question 4, dosto. These historical lessons shaped Soviet operational art, with Svechin's balanced approach standing apart from the more radical Red commanders. Moving on to next question, that is question number 5, which states, the failure to integrate political, military, and economic leadership led to the fall of the Tsarist regime and informed the Soviet concept of war. To what extent do you agree? Your answer should explore the concept of the integral military command, strategic foresight, and the role of Stavka. The impact of logistical and mobilizational weakness on both Tsarist and Soviet planning. Alright, moving ahead to answer of this question. Dosto, in this question, we'll discuss the concept of integral military command, strategic foresight, and how logistics shaped military success. Part 1. The concept of integral military command, Svechin's idea. Svechin believed that military success depends on integrated leadership. What does that mean, dosto? It means political leaders, military commanders, and economic planners must work together as one unit. In Tsarist Russia, this integration was missing. The military acted separately from economic planners and political decision-makers. This led to poor coordination and inefficient war efforts. But after the Russian Revolution, the Soviet state adopted Svechin's concept. War planning became a statewide effort, coordinated through central bodies like the Stavka, the High Command. So, dosto, Svechin's idea of integral military command helped the Soviets unify leadership during wartime. Part 2. Strategic foresight and the role of Stavka. Now, what is strategic foresight? It's about preparing for future military challenges, understanding political goals, enemy strength, and internal capacity. Under Tsarist Russia, this was lacking. They entered wars without full mobilization or realistic goals. A clear example, World War I, they jumped in expecting an easy win, the steamroller myth, but reality hit hard. In contrast, the Soviet Stavka, especially during World War II, was designed to avoid these mistakes. Stavka became a central command structure. It linked all levels of planning, political, military, and economic. This ensured better coordination and realistic strategy. So, dosto, strategic foresight under the Soviets was far superior to that of the Tsarist regime. Part 3. Impact of logistical and mobilizational weakness. Under Tsarist rule, logistics and mobilization were major weaknesses. The railway system was slow and underdeveloped. Mobilization was often poorly timed, like in World War I, where the famous steamroller myth fell apart. Troops were frequently under-equipped and poorly supplied. These issues led to low morale, military defeats, and eventually, revolution. The Soviet state learned from these failures. They emphasized deep mobilization of society and industry. Defense industries were moved deep into Soviet territory to protect them from enemy attacks. Remember, dosto, Svechin warned, operational success depends on strong logistics and realistic strategy. The Soviet model of warfare included mass mobilization, industrial support, and centralized planning, all crucial for handling modern warfare. So, dosto, that was question 5. We saw how Svechin's ideas, strategic foresight, and logistics shaped the Soviet military system, especially compared to Tsarist Russia. Let's move to question 6, which states, Svechin or Tukhachevsky, whose vision of Soviet warfighting was more realistic? Compare their differing assumptions about Soviet industrial capacity, the nature of the coming war, the direction and form of threats facing the USSR. Alright, here we're comparing the different views of Svechin and Tukhachevsky on Soviet industrial capacity, the nature of future wars, and threat directions. Part 1. Assumptions about Soviet industrial capacity. Svechin's view. He was realistic and cautious. Believed the Soviet industry was still underdeveloped. Warned that the USSR couldn't match capitalist powers like Britain or Germany in weapon quality or quantity. What did he emphasize? Defensive depth, mobilization of society, and long-term war preparedness, because though he knew industrial limitations could make wars drag on. Tukhachevsky's view. He was optimistic and aggressive. Believed rapid modernization could make Soviet forces superior. Pushed for a highly mechanized military, lots of tanks and air power. The problem? His vision depended on industrial growth that hadn't happened yet in the 1920s, 30s. So, while Svechin was cautious, Tukhachevsky had big ambitions for Soviet military power. Part 2. Nature of the coming war. Svechin's prediction. Future wars would be long, total, and attritional. He saw the need for full national mobilization. The whole country would have to be involved. His strategy? Flexible, choosing between destruction or attrition depending on the situation. Tukhachevsky's belief. He expected a short, decisive war, focused on offensive deep operations, striking quickly and aggressively. Loved the idea of preventive strikes and rapid victories. But Tukhachevsky was less concerned about the risk of prolonged conflict or overreach, something Svechin warned against. Part 3. Direction and form of threats to the USSR. Svechin's approach. He identified multiple possible threats, especially from the south and southwest, like Romania. He warned against assuming there would be only one direction of attack. His priority? Broad strategic awareness and defensive preparation. Tukhachevsky's focus. Mainly on Poland as the key threat. He advocated for a preemptive strike westward to neutralize threats quickly. He assumed future wars would be fought on enemy territory. So, while Svechin emphasized caution and multi-directional defense, Tukhachevsky focused on offense and striking first. And that wraps up question 6. We've seen how Svechin and Tukhachevsky had different views on industrial capacity, warfare, and threat directions, one cautious, one bold. If you've understood this well, make sure to like, share, and comment. It really helps the channel grow. Moving on to question 7, which states, question 7. Explain the concept of deep operations as developed by Mikhail Tukhachevsky. Your answer should consider the lessons drawn from Mamontov's raid and the Russian Civil War, integration of mechanized forces, aviation, and airborne units, Tukhachevsky's strategic vision, and how it contrasted with Western theorists like J.F.C. Fuller. Alright, let's jump into answer 7. This one's all about Tukhachevsky's military innovations, especially his concept of deep operations and how it shaped Soviet warfare. Part 1. Lessons from Mamontov's raid and the Russian Civil War. Tukhachevsky took inspiration from General Mamontov's 1919 cavalry raid during the Russian Civil War. What happened in Mamontov's raid? His cavalry penetrated deep into enemy territory, disrupted supply lines, railways, and communications, causing chaos behind enemy lines. This raid highlighted the power of deep, behind-the-lines disruption. Tukhachevsky used these lessons to develop the concept of deep operations. Aim, not just strike at the front lines, but hit the entire depth of enemy defenses. Break the enemy's system from the rear as well as the front. So, deep operations was all about collapsing the enemy from within. Part 2. Integration of mechanized forces, aviation, and airborne units. Tukhachevsky rejected relying on traditional infantry alone. He promoted tanks, armored vehicles, and motorized infantry for rapid breakthroughs, airborne units, paratroopers, to land deep behind enemy lines and strike where the enemy least expects. His approach involved coordinated use of aviation, artillery, mechanized forces, airborne units. Goal: break through front lines, create chaos in rear areas, destroy enemy reserves, collapse the enemy's resistance from within. This multi-layered attack was designed to overwhelm the enemy at every level. Part 3. Strategic Vision and Contrast with Western Theorists. Example: JFC Fuller. Tukhachevsky's vision was for a massive, mechanized army backed by industrial power. He rejected the ideas of Western theorists like JFC Fuller. Fuller promoted a small, elite mobile force focused on precision and mobility. But Tukhachevsky saw this as impractical for total war. He believed mass production of tanks and aircraft was necessary. He advocated for total war preparation, with industry and military strategy working together. Economic planning had to support mechanized warfare at full scale. So, dosto, Tukhachevsky's approach was big, bold, and focused on mass mobilization, very different from Western models. We've seen how Tukhachevsky's deep operations combined mechanized forces, air power, and strategic vision to reshape Soviet military thinking. Next up is question 8, which states, how did Soviet political and economic policy in the 1930s shape the development of operational art? Your answer should reference the first 5-year plan and industrial militarization, the role of Stalin's socialism in one country and total war preparation, Tukhachevsky's vision of a mass mechanized army. Alright, this one connects Soviet industrialization with military strategy, showing how the economy and doctrine worked hand in hand. Part 1. The first 5-year plan and industrial militarization, 1929. In 1929, the first 5-year plan was launched to drive rapid industrialization. But this wasn't just about building factories, dosto, it was about militarizing the economy. Key priorities: 3,500 aircraft and 5,000 tanks produced in just 4 years. Military demand shaped industrial output. Factories were built specifically to serve war needs. This plan laid the industrial foundation for the mass mechanization that became central to Soviet operational art. So, dosto, industrial growth wasn't just economic, it was strategic, preparing for future wars. Part 2. Stalin's socialism in one country and total war preparation. Stalin's policy of socialism in one country meant the USSR must rely on itself for defense. What did this lead to? A command economy, everything state-controlled and centrally planned. The economy was militarized, with defense production taking priority over civilian goods. Society was also mobilized for total war. The Soviets anticipated conflict with capitalist powers. So, everything, from factories to education, was geared toward preparing for war. This approach made sure the entire nation was ready for total conflict. Part 3. Tukhachevsky's vision of a mass mechanized army. Tukhachevsky, as we've seen, had big plans for the Soviet military. He advocated for a massive, mechanized force, 260 divisions, 50,000 tanks, 40,000 aircraft. His deep operations strategy required speed, firepower, and scale. Importantly, he linked military doctrine with economic policy. He pushed for reforms in training, doctrine, and equipment. He helped shape long-term military-industrial planning, making sure the economy could support his vision of modern warfare. So, Tukhachevsky's ideas weren't just about the battlefield. They were about how the whole nation prepared for war. And that completes question 8, dosto. We've seen how industrialization, military doctrine, and economic planning came together to build the Soviet war machine. Now moving to question number 9, which states, question 9, assess the impact of the Great Purge on Soviet operational and strategic capabilities. In your response, discuss the scale and effect of the Red Army's leadership decapitation, the contrast between the Pu-36 doctrine and subsequent military effectiveness. Implications for Soviet preparedness on the eve of the Second World War. Alright, moving on to this answer. Here, we'll explore how the Great Purge affected the Red Army, its doctrine, and its preparedness before World War II. Part 1. Scale and effect of Red Army's leadership decapitation. During the Great Purge in the late 1930s, Stalin removed many of the top military leaders. Just look at these shocking numbers. Dosto. 3 out of 5 marshals. 13 of 15 army commanders. 154 of 186 division commanders. Even Tukhachevsky, the main developer of deep operations, was executed. What was the result? Many new leaders were promoted too quickly. They lacked experience and training. This caused a loss of knowledge, fear within the ranks, and a weakened command structure. So, Dosto, the Red Army's leadership was decapitated, leaving it unprepared for the challenges ahead. Part 2. PU-36 Doctrine versus Military Effectiveness. The PU-36 Manual, 1936, was a military doctrine based on deep operations. It called for surprise and deception, combined arms tactics, using tanks, aircraft, and airborne troops, breakthroughs, encirclements, and rapid exploitation of enemy weaknesses. But here's the issue. After the purge, the Red Army lacked skilled commanders who could apply this doctrine. In practice, Red Army operations became clumsy and poorly coordinated. So, while the theory of deep operations existed, execution failed due to the lack of experienced leadership. Part 3. Implications for Soviet preparedness before World War II. By the time the Red Army entered World War II, it faced serious problems. Shaken leadership, inexperienced officers, unproven ability to carry out deep operations. These weaknesses were exposed during the Winter War with Finland, 1939-40. Poor planning, heavy losses, and overall disorganized military effort. The Wehrmacht, German military, observed these failures. They saw the Red Army as disorganized and weak. This boosted Nazi confidence to invade the USSR in 1941. So, the purge, combined with poor leadership and doctrine gaps, left the Soviets vulnerable just before World War II. Moving on to next question, that is question 10, which states, in what ways did the Soviet Finnish War 1939-40 reveal the limitations of Soviet operational art and military leadership? Be sure to include the role of political overconfidence versus military caution, example, Stalin versus Shaposhnikov, failures in planning, logistics, and intelligence in the first phase. How Timoshenko's later approach adjusted to overcome these challenges. Alright, dosto, now we're on question 10. We're going to break down the Soviet experience in the Winter War 1939-40 against Finland, a major lesson in overconfidence versus military caution. Part 1. Political overconfidence versus military caution. Stalin and Defense Commissar Voroshilov thought Finland would be easy to defeat. They expected a quick victory. But Marshal Shaposhnikov, a senior military officer, warned them. He pointed out that the Finnish defenses, especially the Mannerheim line, were strong. He advised careful planning. But dosto, Stalin rejected his caution, calling Shaposhnikov overcautious. Instead, General Meretskov was chosen. He rushed together a war plan in just 3 weeks. That plan turned out to be unrealistic. So, political overconfidence clashed with military caution, leading to poor preparation. Part 2. Failures in the first phase, December 1939 to February 1940. Poor planning. The Red Army spread its forces too thin across a wide front. There were no focused attacks on key positions. Weak logistics. The Soviet army wasn't ready for the harsh winter and difficult terrain. Supplies couldn't keep up. Bad intelligence. Troops ran into unknown minefields, tank traps, and strong Finnish bunkers. High casualties. Despite having massive manpower and equipment, there was little progress. Finnish tactics were smart. They used small ski troops to cut off Soviet columns in the forests. So, dosto, the first phase of the war was a disaster for the Soviets. Part 3. Timoshenko's adjusted approach. In January 1940, Semyon Timoshenko replaced Meretskov. What did he do differently? He took time, about 1 month, to prepare properly for a new offensive. Key changes. Focused attacks on key strong points instead of spreading forces. Used combined arms tactics. Heavy artillery, tanks, infantry working together. This adjusted approach finally broke through the Mannerheim line and led to the capture of Vyborg. Losses were still high, but the operation was more effective and coordinated. So, dosto, the Soviets learned the hard way. But adaptation helped turn things around. The Winter War showed how overconfidence can lead to disaster, but also how adjusting strategy and coordination can bring success. Next up is the final question for this video, question 11, which states, what were the implications of Marshal Ogarkov's revolution in military affairs, RMA, vision? Evaluate his understanding of precision warfare and information systems. The internal resistance he faced, example, Ustinov, arms industry. How this presaged future Western approaches to warfare. Alright dosto, we've reached at question 11, the final question of this chapter. Here, we'll discuss Ogarkov's vision for the revolution in military affairs, RMA, the internal resistance he faced, and how his ideas influenced the future. Let's break this down part by part. Stay tuned, this one's really interesting. Part 1. Precision Warfare and Information Systems. Marshal Nikolai Ogarkov predicted that future wars would rely on precision weapons, automation, data systems for real-time intel and battlefield awareness. He rejected the old idea of mass armies. Instead, he pushed for speed, accuracy, informatization of warfare, using technology to control and dominate the battlefield. Key elements of his vision: automated command systems, integrated communications, sensors, and targeting systems, all connected into unified networks. So, dosto, Ogarkov saw the future, where information and precision would decide wars, not just numbers. Part 2. Internal resistance. But Ogarkov faced serious opposition, especially from Defense Minister Ustinov. Ustinov supported mass production of traditional weapons, a focus on nuclear doctrines, and centralized planning. Ogarkov's reforms threatened the military-industrial complex and the Soviet system of centralized control. His vision challenged old power structures. Result: Ogarkov was removed from his position. His RMA vision was sidelined in favor of traditional doctrine. So, dosto, innovation was crushed by internal politics. Part 3. Legacy and Western influence. Even though Ogarkov's ideas were ignored in the USSR, they were ahead of their time. His vision became reality in Western militaries. Seen in the Gulf War, 1991, with precision strikes and real-time battlefield control. Reflected in NATO air campaigns and non-contact warfare in the 1990s and 2000s. So, dosto, Ogarkov's legacy didn't fade away. It shaped global military thought long after. And that's question 11, dosto, the final question of this chapter. We've covered Ogarkov's RMA vision, the resistance he faced, and how his forward-thinking ideas shaped the future of warfare. If you've enjoyed this series, please like, share, and comment below. And dosto, before we wrap up, if you want the PDFs for military history and current affairs, please feel free to contact us. Believe me, we've prepared these question banks by taking the prescribed books into full consideration, so you're getting the right material for your preparation. We are here to help you, to make your journey smoother and more effective. So, join us and make your preparation easier. Let's tackle this journey together. Jai Hind.